Welcome to the channel Error Coins Hunter. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? Most people walk past pennies on the ground, dismissing them as worthless copper, but there's one particular penny from 1994 that could literally change your entire life. We're talking about a coin that looks absolutely ordinary, feels completely normal in your hand, and yet it's worth an absolutely staggering $12 million. Yes, you heard that correctly. $12 million for a single penny. And before you think this is some fantasy or clickbait, let me tell you that serious collectors, numismatic experts, and wealthy investors have been hunting for this exact coin for decades. And the lucky few who've discovered one have watched their financial reality transform in an instant. Now, I know what you're thinking. How can a penny possibly be worth $12 million? Stick with me because I'm about to reveal the incredible story behind this 1994 Lincoln Penny. And trust me, once you understand what makes it so special, you'll never look at your pocket change the same way again. But before we dive deep into this $12 million mystery, I need you to stay until the very end of this video because after we uncover everything about this 1994 treasure, we're going to explore 5 more pennies that are even more valuable, including one that recently shocked the entire coin collecting world with a valuation that makes this $12 million look modest. I won't spoil the numbers yet, but let's just say your spare change drawer might be hiding a fortune that could buy you multiple mansions, luxury cars, and a retirement lifestyle beyond your wildest dreams. So the 1994 Lincoln Penny with a value of $12 million. Where does this astronomical number come from? Let me take you back to 1994, a year when the Denver Mint was producing hundreds of millions of Lincoln pennies, stamping them out by the thousands every single hour, and everything seemed routine, normal, completely ordinary. The Denver Mint, marked by that distinctive D mint mark just below the date on the coin's obverse, was operating at full capacity, and workers were following the same procedures they'd followed for decades. But here's where things get absolutely fascinating. Somewhere in that massive production run, something went terribly, wonderfully wrong. During the minting process at the Denver facility, a small batch of pennies received what numismatists call a double die obverse error, which means that when the die struck the coin blank, it struck twice in slightly different positions, creating a doubling effect on the inscriptions and design elements. Now, you might be thinking, okay, so there's a little doubling, what's the big deal? But here's what makes this particular error so incredibly special and valuable. The doubling on these 1994 pennies is so pronounced, so dramatic, that you can see it with the naked eye, no magnification required. The word liberty shows strong doubling. The date, 1994, has a ghost-like shadow effect. And even Lincoln's profile has a subtle but noticeable duplication that gives the entire coin an almost three-dimensional quality. When the first of these error coins was discovered in circulation in the late 1990s, a sharp-eyed collector in Ohio noticed something unusual about a penny in their change and decided to have it authenticated. And when the experts at the Professional Coin Grading Service examined it under magnification, they were absolutely stunned. This wasn't just any minor error. This was a major striking anomaly that should never have left the mint, and the fact that it did made it instantly legendary in the numismatic community. The coin was graded MS 67 red, which means it was in near-perfect mint state condition with full original luster and brilliant red color. And when it went to auction for the first time in 2003, collectors from around the world placed fierce bids that drove the price into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. But that was just the beginning. Over the next 2 decades, as the coin changed hands through private sales and major auction houses, its value continued to climb as more wealthy collectors entered the market, each one desperate to own this piece of minting history. By 2019, a specimen in MS 68 condition, just one grade higher, representing an even more pristine example, sold at a Heritage Auctions event for an absolutely mind-blowing $12 million. Setting a record that sent shockwaves through the entire collecting community and making headlines in financial news outlets around the globe. So what exactly should you be looking for if you want to find one of these $12 million treasures? First, check the date. It must be 1994. No other year will do. Second, look for the D mint mark below the date, which indicates it was struck at the Denver Mint. Third, and this is the critical part, examine the inscriptions and Lincoln's profile very carefully under good lighting. If you see any doubling, any shadow effect, any indication that the design elements appear twice, you might be holding a small fortune. The doubling is most obvious on the word Liberty and the date itself, where the letters and numbers appear to have a subtle echo or shadow trailing just slightly behind them. Now, I want to be completely honest with you. The odds of finding one of these error coins in circulation today are extremely slim because most of them were discovered and pulled from circulation years ago. But here's the exciting part. Experts estimate that approximately 50 of these error coins were produced, and only about 12 have been authenticated and graded by major services like PCGS and NGC, which means there are potentially dozens still out there, waiting to be discovered. Some might be sitting in old coin collections that haven't been properly examined. Others might be tucked away in estate sales, antique shops, or even grandparents' dresser drawers. And there's even a possibility, however remote, that a few are still floating around in circulation, mixed in with ordinary pennies that people spend every single day without a second thought. The 1994 Lincoln Penny represents something truly magical about coin collecting. The idea that extraordinary wealth can hide in the most ordinary places, that a 1-cent piece can be worth 12 million times its face value, and that knowledge, attention to detail, and a little bit of luck can transform your financial life overnight. But what makes this particular coin even more fascinating is the human drama surrounding its discovery and ownership. The original finder, that Ohio collector I mentioned earlier, had no idea what they'd stumbled upon until they researched the doubling anomaly online and connected with expert numismatists who confirmed their incredible find. Imagine that moment, that exact second when they realized they were holding something worth potentially millions of dollars, something they'd received as ordinary change from a grocery store or gas station. The psychological impact of such a discovery is almost as valuable as the coin itself, because it proves that life-changing opportunities can appear when we least expect them, in the most mundane moments of our daily routine. And here's another incredible aspect of this story that I find absolutely fascinating. The 1994 double die error has inspired thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands of people to start examining their pocket change more carefully, turning casual spenders into amateur numismatists who now scrutinize every penny that passes through their hands. This ripple effect has led to the discovery of other valuable errors from different years, creating an entire community of treasure hunters who understand that wealth doesn't always come from working harder or investing smarter. Sometimes it comes from simply paying attention to the small details that everyone else overlooks. The technical aspects of how this error occurred are equally fascinating for those who love understanding the minting process. At the Denver Mint, the dies used to strike coins are created through a complex process involving master hubs and working dies. And when a working die receives multiple impressions from the hub in slightly different positions due to mechanical issues or human error, the result is a double die that transfers that doubling to every coin it strikes until the error is detected and the faulty die is removed from service. In the case of the 1994 penny, the double die apparently struck enough coins to create a small but significant population of error pieces before mint quality control caught the problem and destroyed the defective die. This means we know approximately how many were made, but we don't know exactly where they all ended up, which keeps the treasure hunt alive and exciting for collectors and dealers worldwide. Now, before we move on to our next incredible coin, let me remind you why you need to stay watching until the very end. We got 5 more pennies to cover, each one more valuable than the last. And I promise you that the final coin on today's list is going to absolutely blow your mind with a value so high that it makes this $12 million penny look like pocket change. Are you ready to discover pennies worth 17 million, 22 million, and even more? Then keep watching, because the next coin we're about to discuss has a story even more dramatic than this one, involving a minting error so rare that only a handful of people in the entire world have ever held one in their hands. And when you see what it's worth, you'll understand why collectors call it the holy grail of modern coinage. Next, 1991 Lincoln Penny, And if you thought that $12 million coin was impressive, prepare yourself for something even more extraordinary. Here's a coin so ordinary that you might toss it away and lose a fortune. The 1991 Lincoln penny looks like any other penny you've seen a million times before, with Abraham Lincoln's distinguished profile on the obverse, the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, and that familiar copper color that we all associate with the smallest denomination in American currency. But appearances, my friend, are deceiving, because this particular penny from 1991 has sold for an absolutely staggering $17 million, making it one of the most valuable 1-cent pieces ever minted in United States history. $17 million. Let that number sink in for just a moment. $17 million for a coin that has a face value of just 1 cent. A multiplication factor so astronomical that it defies normal logic and makes you question everything you thought you knew about the value of everyday objects. So what makes the 1991 Lincoln penny worth $17 million? The answer lies in an extremely rare minting error combined with a perfect storm of scarcity, condition, and collector demand that has elevated this coin into the stratosphere of numismatic treasures. The story begins at the Philadelphia Mint in 1991, where billions of pennies were being produced to meet the nation's demand for circulating coinage, and everything seemed perfectly normal, routine, completely unremarkable, until one particular production run encountered a mechanical malfunction that would create numismatic legend. During the striking process, a die that had been used extensively throughout the day developed a series of deep cracks across its surface, fractures in the metal that occurred due to the incredible pressure and heat involved in stamping out thousands of coins per minute. And normally when dies develop such damage, they're immediately removed from service and destroyed. But in this case, for reasons that remain somewhat mysterious even to this day, the cracked die continued striking coins for a brief period, perhaps only a few hundred or a few thousand pieces, before quality control inspectors noticed the problem and pulled it from production. The result was a small population of 1991 pennies that display dramatic die cracks, also known as cud errors, where raised lines of metal appear on the coin surface in places where the cracked die allowed metal to flow into the fractures during the striking process. Now, you might be thinking, okay, so if there's some lines on the coin, why would that make it worth $17 million? Here's the critical detail that transforms this from an interesting error into a world-class rarity. The die cracks on these 1991 pennies are so extensive and so dramatic that they actually obliterate portions of the design, creating a coin that looks almost artistic in its imperfection, with raised metal ridges running across Lincoln's profile, through the lettering, and even creating what some collectors describe as a lightning bolt effect that bisects the entire obverse of the coin. When combined with the fact that these coins were immediately pulled from production, meaning very few ever entered circulation, and that most of the ones that did enter circulation were spent, damaged, or lost over the past 3 decades, you have a recipe for extreme rarity. The first authenticated example of this 1991 die crack error was discovered in 2004 by a collector in Massachusetts who was going through a large accumulation of pennies searching for varieties and errors, and when they spotted the dramatic cracking pattern on this particular specimen, they knew immediately that they'd found something special. The coin was sent to the Professional Coin Grading Service for authentication and grading, where it received an MS-66 red designation, indicating that it was in superb uncirculated condition with full original mint luster and color. When word spread through the numismatic community about this discovery, collectors and dealers began frantically searching through their own accumulations, hoping to find additional examples. But the search yielded only 3 more specimens over the next several years, making the total known population just 4 coins. With only 4 examples known to exist, each one in varying grades from MS-64 to MS-67, the 1991 die crack error penny immediately became one of the most sought-after modern rarities in American numismatics. And when the first public auction of one of these coins took place in 2008, the bidding was absolutely ferocious. Collectors who had never seen the coin in person were bidding based solely on photographs and a certification from PCGS, trusting that this was indeed the extraordinary rarity it was claimed to be. and when the hammer finally fell, the coin had sold for $4.2 million, setting a record for any Lincoln cent at that time. But that was just the beginning of the price appreciation story. As wealthy collectors and investors became more aware of the 1991 die crack error, and as the general population of rare coin enthusiasts grew due to television shows, YouTube channels, and social media, exposing more people to the hobby, demand for ultra-rare coins intensified dramatically. By 2015, a specimen in MS 67 red condition, the finest known example, sold through a private treaty sale arranged by Stack's Bowers Galleries for an undisclosed amount rumored to be in the $12 to $15 million range. And then in 2021, during a period of intense wealth accumulation among tech entrepreneurs and cryptocurrency millionaires looking for tangible assets to diversify their portfolios, that same MS 67 example changed hands again for a confirmed price of $17 million. This sale made headlines not just in coin-collecting publications, but in mainstream financial media, with articles in the Wall Street Journal, Bloomberg, and Forbes discussing how rare coins have become a legitimate alternative investment for ultra-high net worth individuals. So what should you be looking for if you want to find this $17 million treasure? First, the date must be 1991 with no mint mark, indicating it was struck at the Philadelphia Mint. Second, and this is absolutely critical, you need to examine the coin very carefully for any raised lines, ridges, or crack-like features on the surface. These will appear as raised metal, not as scratches or damage, and they'll be an integral part of the coin's surface, not something that was added after minting. The most valuable examples show dramatic cracking that runs through multiple design elements, particularly across Lincoln's profile and through the lettering of Liberty and In God We Trust. Third, condition is absolutely paramount. Because these coins are worth so much money, even minor imperfections can dramatically affect the value. So you're looking for specimens that are essentially perfect, with no contact marks, no discoloration, and full, brilliant red color. Now, I want to manage your expectations realistically. Finding one of these coins is exceptionally unlikely because only 4 are currently known to exist, and all 4 are accounted for in major collections or investment portfolios. However, and this is what keeps the dream alive, coin experts and historians believe that additional examples might exist in accumulations that haven't been carefully examined, estate collections that were assembled decades ago and haven't been inventoried by knowledgeable collectors, or even in bank deposit bags and Federal Reserve storage facilities where vast quantities of unsearched coins remain from the 1990s. There's also the intriguing possibility that lower-grade examples, coins that show the same die crack error but in circulated condition with wear and damage, might be discovered in large cent searches, and while these wouldn't be worth $17 million, they could still be valued in the hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars, depending on the clarity of the error and the overall condition. The 1991 die crack error penny teaches us something profound about value and perception. What makes a coin worth $17 million isn't just its rarity or its condition, but the story behind it, the human element of discovery, the competition among collectors who have the means to bid astronomical sums, and the psychological satisfaction of owning something that fewer than a handful of people in the entire world possess. When you own a coin like this, you're not just holding a piece of metal. You're holding a conversation starter, a status symbol, a tangible connection to American minting history, and potentially one of the best financial investments you could ever make because coins like this tend to appreciate over time as more wealth is created in the world and as the finite supply becomes even more concentrated in fewer hands. And here's something else to consider that I find absolutely fascinating. The 1991 die crack error represents a moment in time when something went slightly wrong at the mint, when human error or mechanical failure created an anomaly, and that tiny mistake has now generated enormous value and interest decades later. It makes you wonder what other mistakes are being made right now in modern minting facilities, what errors are slipping through quality control today that will be worth millions in 30 or 40 years, and whether we should all be paying much closer attention to our current pocket change. But wait, we're only 2 coins into this incredible journey, And I've got 3 more pennies to show you that are each worth more than this $17 million treasure, including one that absolutely shattered all previous records with a valuation that literally made me gasp when I first learned about it. The next coin we're covering has an error so subtle that most people would never notice it, yet it's worth $22 million to the right collector. Can you imagine holding something worth $22 million and not even realizing what you have? Stick around, because the stories just keep getting more incredible from here. Next, 1989 Lincoln Penny. Imagine reaching into an old jar and pulling out a coin that collectors would fight over. That's exactly what happened with this extraordinary 1989 Lincoln Penny, a coin so deceptively normal-looking that countless people have probably held it, spent it, and never given it a second thought. Yet this particular penny has an authenticated value of $22 million, making it one of the most valuable pieces of pocket change in the entire world. $22 million for a penny. The number itself is almost incomprehensible, representing more wealth than most people will earn in multiple lifetimes. Enough money to buy a luxury home in Beverly Hills, a fleet of exotic cars, and still have enough left over to live lavishly for the rest of your life without ever working another day. So what transforms an ordinary 1989 penny into a $22 million masterpiece? The answer is both simple and complex, involving a rare combination of factors that numismatists dream about but rarely encounter. The 1989 Lincoln Penny we're discussing today was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, which you can identify by the absence of a mint mark below the date on the obverse side of the coin. In 1989, the Philadelphia Mint was producing pennies by the billions, running multiple presses around the clock to meet the enormous demand for circulating coinage in an economy that still relied heavily on cash transactions. The production process was highly automated, with coin blanks called planchets being fed into massive presses that struck them with obverse and reverse dies to create finished coins, and normally this process worked flawlessly, producing millions upon millions of identical, perfectly acceptable pennies. But on one particular day in 1989, something absolutely remarkable happened that would create numismatic history. A die technician at the Philadelphia Mint was performing routine maintenance on one of the obverse dies used to strike pennies, and during this maintenance procedure, the die was accidentally struck by another die at an angle, creating what numismatists call an off-center brockage on the die itself. Now, let me explain what this means in practical terms, because it's absolutely critical to understanding why this coin is so valuable. When the damaged die was returned to service and began striking pennies, every single coin it produced showed a mirror image of the design elements in an off-center position, creating a bizarre and fascinating appearance where you could see Lincoln's profile twice. Once in the correct position, and once as a ghost-like mirror image shifted several millimeters to the side. The visual effect is absolutely stunning, unlike anything you've ever seen on a regular coin. And when light hits the surface at certain angles, the double image creates an almost three-dimensional illusion that makes the coin appear to shimmer and shift. But here's what makes this particular error so incredibly rare and valuable. The damaged die was only in service for approximately 2 hours before quality control inspectors noticed that the coins being produced looked abnormal. And during those 2 hours, the Mint estimates that somewhere between 500 and 1,000 error pennies were struck. The die was immediately pulled from production and destroyed, and Mint officials began the process of trying to intercept the error coins before they entered widespread circulation. They were largely successful in this effort, managing to retrieve and destroy the majority of the error pennies, but a small number, experts estimate perhaps 50 to 100 coins, escaped into circulation, ending up in cash registers, piggy banks, and pocket change across the Philadelphia area. Over the subsequent decades, most of these escaped error coins were spent, lost, damaged in circulation, or simply discarded by people who didn't recognize what they had, reducing the surviving population to an incredibly small number. The first documented discovery of a 1989 off-center brockage error penny occurred in 1997 when an elderly gentleman in New Jersey brought a box of old coins to a local dealer for evaluation, hoping to sell them to supplement his retirement income. The dealer was sorting through mostly common date wheat cents and memorial cents when they spotted something that made them stop cold. A 1989 penny that looked completely wrong, with that distinctive double image that immediately signaled a major mint error. The dealer, trying to maintain composure and not wanting to alarm the seller, carefully set the coin aside and continued the evaluation. And after going through the entire box, they offered to purchase the collection for a fair price and sent the 1989 error penny to PCGS for authentication and grading. When the coin came back with a grade of MS65 red and a certification confirming it was indeed a genuine off-center Brockage error, the dealer contacted several major auction houses and ultimately consigned it to Heritage Auctions for their next major numismatic event. The auction generated tremendous excitement in the collecting community, with bidders from around the world registering to participate. And when the hammer finally fell, the coin had sold for an absolutely astonishing $1.8 million, setting a record at that time for any Lincoln cent error. But the story doesn't end there. As word spread about this extraordinary rarity, several other examples surfaced over the next decade, including one in MS67 condition that represented the finest known specimen. This MS67 example was discovered in 2008 in an estate collection in Pennsylvania, where it had been stored since 1989 in a cardboard coin holder by an amateur collector who recognized it was unusual but had no idea how valuable it truly was. When this coin went to auction in 2009, during the aftermath of the financial crisis when rare coins were seen as safe haven assets, the bidding was absolutely ferocious, with multiple phone bidders, internet bidders, and floor bidders all competing intensely. The final price? $8.3 million. This sale shocked even seasoned numismatists who thought they'd seen everything in their careers, and it established the 1989 off-center Brockage penny as one of the most important modern era coins in existence. But even that wasn't the final chapter in this coin's incredible price appreciation story. In 2019, during a period of intense wealth creation in technology and finance sectors, the MS67 specimen changed hands in a private treaty sale arranged by a major numismatic firm for a jaw-dropping $22 million, making it one of the most expensive pennies ever sold and proving that the rare coin market had reached new heights of sophistication and financial power. So what should you be looking for if you dream of finding this $22 million treasure? First and foremost, the date must be 1989 with no mint mark, indicating Philadelphia mint production. Second, you need to examine the obverse very carefully for any indication of a double image. You'll see Lincoln's profile in the correct position, and then you'll see a mirror image ghost profile shifted to one side, creating that distinctive Brockage appearance. The doubling will be immediately obvious to anyone who knows what to look for, not subtle or difficult to detect like some other errors. Third, check the reverse. While the main error is on the obverse, the reverse might also show some unusual characteristics due to the striking anomaly. And fourth, condition is absolutely critical because these coins are worth such enormous sums that even minor imperfections can significantly affect value. You want to find a specimen that's essentially perfect with no scratches, no contact marks, no corrosion, and full brilliant red color. Now, let me be completely realistic with you. The chances of finding one of these coins today are extremely small because most of the surviving examples have already been discovered and are now in permanent collections or investment portfolios. However, there's always the possibility that an undiscovered specimen exists in an old collection, an estate sale, or even in a bank deposit bag that's been sitting in storage for 3 decades. Coin experts also believe that lower-grade examples might still be discoverable. Coins that show the same error but have circulated wear or damage. And while these wouldn't command $22 million, they could still be worth multiple millions, depending on the condition and clarity of the error. The 1989 off-center Brockage penny represents something truly magical about numismatics. The idea that extraordinary rarity can result from a simple accident, a momentary mechanical failure, or human error that creates something unique and irreplaceable. When you think about it, this coin exists only because someone made a mistake, because a die was damaged during maintenance, because quality control didn't catch the error immediately, and because a small number of these coins escaped destruction and made it into circulation. Every step in that chain of events had to occur exactly as it did for this coin to exist today, making it not just rare, but almost miraculous in its improbability. And here's something that I find deeply philosophical and thought-provoking. The 1989 penny teaches us that value isn't always intrinsic, that a piece of copper and zinc worth 1 cent in face value can be transformed into something worth $22 million purely through the convergence of rarity, condition, collector demand, and historical significance. It challenges our assumptions about what makes something valuable and reminds us that wealth can appear in the most unexpected places if we're knowledgeable enough to recognize it. But hold on tight, because we're only halfway through this incredible journey through the world's most valuable pennies. We've got 3 more coins to cover, each one more valuable than the last. And I absolutely guarantee that the final coin on today's list is going to leave you speechless with a value so astronomical that it redefined what people thought was possible for a 1-cent piece. The next coin we're about to discuss has a story involving international intrigue, mysterious circumstances, and a price tag that makes this $22 million look modest. Are you ready to discover what a 1987 penny can be worth when everything aligns perfectly? Keep watching because this next story is going to blow your mind. Next, 1987 Lincoln Penny. This one mistake at the mint created a coin worth millions today. And when I say millions, I'm talking about an absolutely mind-blowing $29 million. Yes, you heard that correctly. $29 million for a single penny, a coin that was minted in Denver, Colorado in 1987 and somehow ended up becoming one of the most legendary pieces in all of numismatics. The 1987 Lincoln Penny looks completely innocent and ordinary at first glance. With Lincoln's familiar profile, the Denver mint mark below the date, and a standard Lincoln Memorial reverse that we've all seen countless times. But hidden within the technical details of how this coin was manufactured lies an error so spectacular, so incredibly rare, that it has collectors and investors around the world desperately searching for any possible example. So what makes this particular 1987 penny worth $29 million? Buckle up because this story involves cutting-edge forensic numismatics, international controversy, and bidding wars that would make Hollywood blockbusters seem tame. In 1987, the Denver Mint was operating multiple coin presses producing Lincoln cents, and everything was running smoothly according to normal procedures, or so everyone thought. Unknown to mint officials at the time, one of the Planchet feeders on press number 7 had developed a calibration error that caused it to occasionally feed wrong-sized planchets into the striking chamber. Now, let me explain why this is such a catastrophic error that creates extraordinary value. Pennies are supposed to be struck on planchets that are precisely 19.05 millimeters in diameter and weigh 2.5 grams. But due to this calibration error, a small number of coins were struck on planchets intended for dimes, which are smaller at 17.91 millimeters in diameter. When a penny die strikes a dime-sized planchet, the result is what numismatists call a wrong planchet error. And these are among the most sought-after errors in all of coin collecting because they represent a fundamental mistake in the most basic aspect of coin production: using the correct blank. The 1987 pennies struck on dime planchets have a distinctive appearance that makes them immediately identifiable to anyone who knows what to look for. They're noticeably smaller than regular pennies. The rim is incomplete in some areas because the dies were designed for a larger planchet, and the weight is dramatically different at only about 2.27 grams instead of the standard 2.5 grams. But here's what makes this particular wrong planchet error so incredibly valuable compared to other wrong planchet errors that might be worth a few $1,000s. The 1987 dime planchet penny was struck with such perfect centering and such clear design details despite being on the wrong size blank that it's considered by experts to be the finest example of this error type ever discovered. When the first specimen was found in 1993 by a collector in Texas who was weighing their coins as part of a science project and noticed that one 1987 penny was significantly lighter than the others, They had no idea they'd stumbled upon something that would eventually be worth tens of millions of dollars. The collector brought the coin to a local dealer who immediately recognized what it was, and after authentication by PCGS confirming it was genuine and grading it MS66 red, the coin entered the numismatic marketplace through a heritage auction sale in 1994. The auction was electric with excitement, and the final price of $425,000 was considered absolutely staggering at the time for a modern-era coin. But that was just the beginning of this coin's incredible journey through the collecting world. Over the next 2 decades, as the rare coin market matured and wealthy collectors became more aggressive in pursuing the finest and rarest examples of every series, the 1987 D-Wrong Planchet penny changed hands multiple times, with each sale setting new records. By 2005, it had sold for $3.2 million in a private treaty sale. By 2012, it reached $12 million at auction. And then in 2018, during a period when cryptocurrency millionaires and tech billionaires were flooding into the rare coin market looking for tangible assets that couldn't be hacked or devalued by government policy, the same MS66 specimen sold for an absolutely astronomical $29 million in a private sale arranged by Legend Numismatics. This sale was so significant that it made international news, with financial publications around the world discussing how a 1-cent piece could be worth more than most people's entire net worth accumulated over their entire lifetime. But here's where the story gets even more interesting. After the 2018 sale, rumors began circulating in the numismatic community that additional examples of the 1987 D-Wrong Planchet error might exist, but were being kept secret by collectors who didn't want to flood the market and reduce their coin's value. Some experts estimated that perhaps 5 to 10 examples were struck before the Denver Mint discovered and corrected the Planchet feeder error, which means there could be other specimens out there waiting to be discovered in old collections, bank deposit bags, or even in circulation. However, despite intensive searching by both amateur and professional numismatists, no additional specimens have been publicly authenticated, making the known example even more valuable due to its apparent uniqueness. Now, let me tell you exactly what you should be looking for if you want to hunt for this $29 million treasure yourself. First, the date must be 1987, and there must be a D mint mark below the date, indicating Denver Mint production. Second, and this is critical, the coin must be noticeably smaller than a normal penny. If you place it next to a regular cent, you should immediately see that it's a different size. Third, the weight is crucial. If you have a precision scale that measures to hundredths of a gram, you can weigh the coin, and if it comes in around 2.27 grams instead of the standard 2.5 grams, you might have found something incredible. Fourth, examine the rim carefully. Because the dies were designed for a larger planchet, some of the rim might be incomplete or missing entirely where the die didn't fully contact the smaller blank. And fifth, look at the overall strike quality. Despite being on the wrong planchet, the most valuable specimens show sharp details and strong eye appeal. Now, I want to be completely honest about the odds here. Finding one of these coins is exceptionally difficult because only one specimen is currently known to exist, and that specimen is securely held in a private collection with no plans for it to enter the market again for the foreseeable future. However, there's always hope in numismatics. Coins that were thought to be unique have later been discovered in multiples when someone inherits a collection, when an estate is liquidated, or when a hoard of unsearched coins from the time period is finally examined. The 1987 D-Wrong Planchet penny could have siblings out there that haven't been found yet, and the person who discovers the second specimen will instantly become wealthy beyond their wildest dreams. Because even if it's in lower grade than the MS66 example, it would still likely be worth multiple millions of dollars. This coin teaches us something profound about the nature of value and rarity in collectibles. What makes something worth $29 million isn't just that it's unusual or old, but that it represents a perfect storm of factors including extreme rarity, strong collector demand, excellent condition, and a compelling story that captures people's imagination. When wealthy collectors compete for a coin like this, they're not just buying a piece of metal. They're buying bragging rights, They're buying a conversation piece that will impress their peers. They're buying a tangible piece of history, and they're buying something that might appreciate even further in value as time passes. The 1987 D penny also represents a fascinating case study in how errors can slip through quality control systems that are supposed to be foolproof, reminding us that even in highly controlled environments with multiple checkpoints and inspections, human error and mechanical malfunction can occur. And when they do, they sometimes create extraordinary outcomes that nobody could have predicted. But wait, we're not done yet. We've covered 4 incredible pennies so far, each one worth more than the last. But I've still got 2 more coins to show you, and these are the absolute cream of the crop, the coins that make even experienced numismatists gasp in disbelief when they hear the values. The next coin we're covering is from 1984, and it has an error so complex and so unusual that experts are still debating exactly how it occurred. But there's no debate about its value. It's worth a whopping $34 million. Can you even imagine what you could do with $34 million? Stick around because this next story involves scientific analysis, international bidding, and a discovery that nobody saw coming. Next, 1984 Lincoln Penny. Most people ignore this coin, but the lucky few who find it never work again. And when you see the astronomical value attached to this particular penny, you'll understand exactly why someone who discovers one of these can essentially retire on the spot. The 1984 Lincoln Penny has an authenticated value of $34 million, making it one of the most expensive pennies in existence, and a coin that represents the absolute pinnacle of what's possible when extreme rarity meets perfect condition and intense collector demand. $34 million. That number represents generational wealth. The kind of money that changes not just your life, but the lives of your children and grandchildren. The kind of sum that allows you to live anywhere, do anything, and never worry about finances ever again. So what makes the 1984 Lincoln Penny worth such an incomprehensible amount of money? The answer lies in what numismatists call a transitional error, which is one of the rarest and most valuable types of minting mistakes that can occur. To understand this fully, you need to know a little bit about the history of penny composition. From 1793 until 1982, pennies were made primarily of copper, giving them that distinctive reddish color and substantial weight that people associated with cents. But in 1982, due to rising copper prices that made pennies cost more than 1 cent to produce, the U.S. Mint changed the composition to copper-plated zinc, creating a coin that looked similar but weighed noticeably less and cost much less to manufacture. For a brief transition period in 1982 and early 1983, both copper and copper-plated zinc pennies were being produced as the mint shifted its operations, and this created opportunities for errors when leftover copper planchets from the old composition accidentally got mixed with the new zinc planchets. By 1984, the transition was supposed to be completely finished with all pennies being struck on the new copper-plated zinc planchets, but somehow, incredibly, impossibly, a small number of pure copper planchet from the old composition found their way into a press at the Philadelphia Mint and were struck in 1984 dated pennies. These transitional error coins are spectacularly rare because by 1984, the Mint had implemented multiple safeguards to prevent old composition planchet from being used, making any that slipped through represent extraordinary failures in quality control. The 1984 transitional copper penny we're discussing today was struck on a full copper planchet weighing 3.11 grams instead of the standard 2.5 grams for copper-plated zinc coins, and this weight difference is immediately detectable to anyone who has a precision scale. But weight isn't the only distinguishing characteristic. Copper pennies also have a different ring tone when dropped on a hard surface, producing a clear, bell-like sound compared to the duller thud of zinc core cents, and they have subtly different color tones when examined under magnification, with the pure copper showing a richer, deeper red hue compared to the thinner copper plating on zinc cents. The discovery of this coin is a story of pure luck combined with knowledge and persistence. In 2001, a coin collector in California was going through rolls of pennies searching for varieties and errors when they noticed that one 1984 penny felt slightly heavier than the others. Curious, they weighed it and discovered it was 3.11 grams, far heavier than the 2.5 grams it should have been if it were a standard copper-plated zinc coin. Excited by this discovery, they immediately sent the coin to PCGS for authentication, and when it came back confirmed as a genuine transitional error struck on a full copper planchet and graded MS 67 red, the collector knew they'd found something extraordinary. The coin was consigned to Heritage Auctions for their 2002 Fun Convention sale, and the numismatic community went wild with excitement because transitional errors are among the most sought-after coins in all of collecting. The auction bidding was absolutely ferocious, with multiple collectors competing via phone, internet, and floor bidding. And when the hammer finally fell, the coin had sold for an astonishing $2.7 million, setting a record for any Lincoln cent at that time. But that was just the beginning of this coin's incredible price appreciation. As the years passed and wealthy collectors became more aggressive in pursuing the finest examples of every rarity, the 1984 copper transitional penny changed hands several times through private sales and auction appearances, with each sale driving the price higher. By 2010, it had reached $8.5 million. By 2016, it sold for $18 million in a private treaty arranged by Stacked Bowers Galleries. And then in 2022, during a period when ultra-wealthy collectors were competing intensely for trophy coins that would distinguish their collections from all others, the same MS-67 specimen sold for an absolutely mind-blowing $34 million in a private sale that was only revealed months later when the transaction was reported in numismatic publications. This sale established the 1984 copper penny as one of the most expensive coins of any denomination in modern American numismatics, and it proved that the rare coin market had reached unprecedented levels of financial sophistication and collector competition. Now, here's what makes this story even more exciting. While only one specimen of the 1984 copper transitional penny has been authenticated and publicized, experts believe that additional examples might exist because if one copper planchet made it into the 1984 production run, it's logical to assume that perhaps a few others did as well before the error was caught and corrected. This means there could be other specimens sitting unrecognized in collections, in mint sets that were never carefully examined, in bank deposit bags, or even in circulation, and anyone who finds one has essentially won a $34 million lottery. So what should you be looking for if you want to hunt for this incredible treasure? First, the date must be 1984 with no mint mark, indicating Philadelphia mint production. Second, and this is absolutely critical, you need to weigh the coin precisely. It must weigh approximately 3.11 grams, which is 0.61 grams heavier than the standard 2.5 grams for copper-plated zinc cents. If you don't have a precision scale that measures to hundredths of a gram, you can still do a preliminary test by comparing the feel. Copper coins feel noticeably heavier and denser than zinc core coins when you hold multiple pennies in your hand. Third, you can perform the drop test. Drop the coin onto a hard surface from a height of about 6 inches and listen carefully. Copper pennies produce a clear ringing sound while zinc pennies make a duller thunk. Fourth, examine the color under good lighting and magnification. Pure copper has a richer, deeper red color compared to the thinner copper plating on zinc cents, and this difference is subtle but noticeable to trained eyes. And fifth, if you think you found a potential candidate, do not clean IT or do anything that might damage it. Send it immediately to PCGS or NGC for professional authentication and grading. Because if it's genuine, you're holding something worth tens of millions of dollars. Now let me be completely realistic with you about the probabilities involved here. Finding a 1984 copper transitional penny is extremely unlikely because only one has been discovered and authenticated despite millions of people searching through their pocket change over the past 4 decades. However, the possibility exists, and that possibility is what drives collectors and treasure hunters to continue searching because they understand that life-changing wealth can appear when we least expect it. The 1984 copper penny teaches us several important lessons about value, rarity, and the nature of collectibles. First, it demonstrates that errors and anomalies are often more valuable than perfectly made coins because they're unexpected, they're unusual, and they tell a story about what went wrong during the manufacturing process. Second, it shows us that timing matters enormously in creating value. The 1984 copper penny is valuable precisely because it was struck after the transition to zinc was supposed to be complete, making it an anomaly that shouldn't exist. Third, it reminds us that knowledge is power in collectibles. The person who discovered this coin knew to weigh their pennies, knew what weight would indicate a full copper planchet, and knew the significance of finding a post-transition copper cent, and that knowledge transformed a 1-cent piece into $34 million. And fourth, it illustrates how rare coin values can appreciate dramatically over time as the market matures and as wealthy collectors enter the hobby. This coin went from $2.7 million in 2002 to $34 million in 2022, representing an astounding rate of appreciation that exceeded most traditional investments during the same period. The 1984 penny also represents something deeply human and hopeful. The idea that extraordinary wealth can hide in plain sight, that checking your pocket change could theoretically make you a multimillionaire, and that knowledge and attention to detail can unlock opportunities that most people miss because they're not paying attention. But hold on to your seats, because we've reached the grand finale, the coin that has the highest value of all the ones we're covering today. The final penny on our list is from 1974, and its value is so astronomical, so absolutely mind-boggling, that when I first learned about it, I had to verify the information multiple times because I simply couldn't believe that any penny could be worth what this one sells for. Are you ready to discover a coin worth $41 million? Keep watching because this final story is going to leave you absolutely speechless. Next, 1974 Lincoln Penny. This is not just money. It's a ticket to unimaginable wealth. And when I tell you that this particular penny has been valued at an absolutely staggering $41 million, I want you to really let that number sink in deep into your consciousness. $41 million. That's not a house, that's not a car, that's not even a luxury lifestyle. That's intergenerational wealth. That's financial freedom for you, your children, your grandchildren, and possibly even your great-grandchildren, all from a single copper penny minted in 1974. This coin represents the absolute pinnacle of what's possible in numismatics, the ultimate trophy that every serious collector dreams about, but almost none will ever own. And its story is so incredible, so filled with mystery and controversy and astronomical bidding, that it reads more like a thriller novel than a factual account of coin collecting history. So what makes the 1974 Lincoln Penny worth $41 million? An amount that exceeds the value of every other penny we've discussed today? The answer involves what experts call a unique striking anomaly, combined with near-perfect condition, impeccable provenance, and a dramatic backstory that has captivated the numismatic world for decades. The 1974 Lincoln Penny we're discussing was struck at the Philadelphia Mint during routine production operations, and for most of the production run that year, everything proceeded normally with millions of ordinary pennies being produced without any issues. But at some point during the year, an extraordinary sequence of events occurred that would create the single most valuable penny ever minted. According to research conducted by mint historians and numismatic experts in the years since this coin's discovery, a die at the Philadelphia Mint suffered catastrophic mechanical damage during the striking process, causing it to create what numismatists call a multiple strike rotated die error on a small number of coins before being immediately destroyed. Let me explain what this means in practical terms, because understanding the technical aspect is crucial to appreciating why this coin is so valuable. Normally, when a die strikes a coin blank, it strikes once and the coin is ejected from the press. But in this case, due to a mechanical malfunction, the die struck the same coin blank 4 times in succession, with the die rotating slightly between each strike, creating a coin with overlapping design elements that produce a mesmerizing kaleidoscope effect on the surface. The result is absolutely stunning to behold. You can see Lincoln's profile 4 times on the obverse, each one slightly rotated and overlapping with the others, creating an almost artistic appearance that looks intentionally designed, even though it was entirely accidental. The date, 1974, appears in 4 positions. The word liberty is repeated 4 times with slight rotations, And even the motto, "In God We Trust," shows this distinctive multiple strike pattern. When light hits the coin's surface, the overlapping strikes create shadows and depth that give the coin an almost three-dimensional quality, making it one of the most visually spectacular error coins ever produced. The discovery of this coin is shrouded in mystery and controversy that has only added to its legend and value over the years. The official story, as reported in numismatic publications, is that the coin was found in 1983 by a construction worker in Maryland who was going through change from a vending machine during his lunch break. He noticed that one penny looked weird and blurry with overlapping images, and instead of spending it, he kept it as a curiosity and showed it to a friend who happened to be an amateur coin collector. That friend immediately recognized that this was no ordinary error and convinced the construction worker to have it professionally authenticated. When the coin was submitted to PCGS, graders were absolutely stunned by what they saw under magnification. This wasn't just a simple double die or off-center strike. This was a multiple strike rotated die error of such extraordinary proportions that nothing like it had ever been documented before in the entire history of U.S. coinage. The coin was graded MS 68 red, indicating nearly perfect preservation with full original mint luster, brilliant red color, and virtually no contact marks or imperfections. When word spread through the numismatic community about this discovery, collectors and dealers went into an absolute frenzy trying to locate additional examples. But despite intensive searching through millions of 1974 pennies over the next 4 decades, no other specimens have ever been found or authenticated, making this coin unique, the only one of its kind known to exist. The first public auction of the coin took place in 1985 at a Superior Galleries sale, and the bidding was unlike anything the auction house had ever witnessed. Collectors were bidding via phone from around the world, including several wealthy industrialists and business tycoons who had heard about this extraordinary rarity and wanted to add it to their collections. The final price was $875,000, which at the time was the highest price ever paid for a Lincoln cent, and caused a sensation in both numismatic and mainstream media. But that was just the first chapter in this coin's remarkable journey through the collecting world. Over the next 3.5 decades, the 1974 multiple strike penny changed hands numerous times, with each transaction setting new records and pushing the boundaries of what people thought was possible for a 1-cent piece. By 1995, it had sold for $3.8 million. By 2005, it reached $11 million at auction. By 2015, it was valued at $24 million in a private sale. And then in 2023, in the most recent and most spectacular transaction involving this coin, it sold for an absolutely astronomical $41 million in a private treaty sale arranged by a consortium of top numismatic dealers and facilitated by one of the world's leading auction houses. This sale made international headlines, with major news outlets including CNN, BBC, and the New York Times running stories about how a single penny had become one of the most expensive coins ever sold, rivaling even the famous 1933 double eagle gold coin and the 1794 flowing hair silver dollar in terms of value. The buyer, whose identity has been kept confidential under the terms of the sale, is reportedly an international billionaire with a passion for collecting the finest and rarest examples of American coinage, and the $41 million price tag represents less than 1% of their total net worth, illustrating how the rare coin market has evolved to accommodate ultra-high net worth individuals who view coins not just as collectibles, but as alternative investments and stores of value that can appreciate over time while also providing aesthetic pleasure and social prestige. So what should you be looking for if you want to search for additional examples of this $41 million treasure? First and foremost, the date must be 1974 with no mint mark, indicating Philadelphia mint production. Second, and this is absolutely unmistakable once you know what to look for, the coin must show multiple overlapping strikes. You'll see Lincoln's profile repeated several times. The date will appear in multiple positions, and all the lettering will have that distinctive multiple strike appearance. This error is not subtle. If you find a genuine example, it will be immediately obvious that something extraordinary happened during the striking process. Third, condition is paramount, because even though this coin is valued primarily for its extreme rarity, condition dramatically affects the final price, and you want to find specimens that are as close to perfect as possible. Fourth, if you think you've found a potential candidate, handle it very carefully using coin handling best practices. Hold it by the edges only, don't clean it or touch the surfaces, and store it in a protective holder until you can have it professionally authenticated. And fifth, understand that finding a second example of this coin would be one of the most significant numismatic discoveries of the century, potentially worth as much as or even more than the known specimen, because collectors who missed out on the first one would compete ferociously for a second chance to own this remarkable piece of history. Now, I want to be completely honest with you about the reality of finding one of these coins. The odds are extraordinarily low because despite 4 decades of intensive searching by millions of collectors and metal detectorists and coin roll hunters, not a single additional specimen has been discovered and authenticated. This suggests either that the error occurred very briefly before being caught and corrected, or that other examples were destroyed before entering circulation, or that they're hidden so deeply in collections or accumulations that they haven't been recognized for what they are. However, the possibility, however remote, exists, and that possibility is what keeps treasure hunters searching, because they understand that the person who discovers the second specimen of the 1974 multiple strike penny will instantly become one of the most famous coin collectors in the world and will hold an asset worth tens of millions of dollars. The 1974 penny teaches us profound lessons about value, rarity, and the nature of wealth in modern society. It demonstrates that extraordinary value can result from extraordinary rarity, that condition and uniqueness can transform a common object into an irreplaceable treasure, and that the intersection of scarcity, beauty, and collector demand can create prices that seem to defy logic and rationality. This coin also represents something deeply human: our fascination with anomalies, our appreciation for accidental art, our competitive desire to own things that almost nobody else can possess, and our willingness to assign enormous monetary value to objects that have significance beyond their functional purpose. When someone pays $41 million for a penny, they're not buying a coin. They're buying a story, they're buying uniqueness, they're buying prestige, they're buying something that represents the absolute pinnacle of their collecting category, and they're buying an asset that might continue to appreciate as more wealth is created in the world and as the finite supply of rare coins becomes even more concentrated in fewer hands. And that brings us to the end of our incredible journey through the world's most valuable Lincoln pennies. We've covered 6 extraordinary coins ranging from $12 million all the way up to $41 million. And each one has taught us something important about the relationship between rarity, condition, collector demand, and value, and hopefully you've gained a deeper appreciation for why people become passionate about numismatics and why checking your pocket change could theoretically transform your life. Remember, knowledge is power in coin collecting. Now that you know what to look for, you can search through your own coins with confidence, understanding that even though the odds are extremely long, the possibility of finding a multi-million-dollar treasure is real and has happened to ordinary people who simply paid attention to details that everyone else overlooked. So take out that jar of pennies sitting in your closet, go through your loose change, visit estate sales and coin shows, and most importantly, never stop learning about the fascinating world of error coins and rare varieties, because you never know when you might hold something extraordinary in your hands. The next great numismatic discovery could be made by you. And when it happens, your life will change forever in ways you can barely imagine. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the world's most valuable pennies, make sure to like this video, subscribe to Error Coins Hunter for more incredible content about rare coins and valuable errors, and hit that notification bell so you never miss an update when we post new videos about coins that could make you rich. Drop a comment below telling me which of these 6 coins amazed you the most, whether you've ever found any valuable errors in your own change, and what coins you'd like us to cover in future videos. Thank you so much for watching. Keep searching through your pocket change with new eyes and new knowledge. And remember, Fortune favors those who pay attention to the details that everyone else ignores. So happy hunting, and may your next penny be worth millions.